Welcome everyone to our special pre-iPhone event live stream. Welcome to Gadgets 360. For those of you who've been watching us on Facebook Live regularly, welcome back. And this is the first time we are on YouTube as well, so thank you for joining us. You could be editing down whatever is important and what you need to know. You can follow all those updates on gadgets360.com, on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at the same URL. And we also have a detailed podcast at the end of it through Orbital, our dedicated tech podcast, which is run by Pranay. So now, on to the announcements. As you know, a lot of it has been leaked, as it is every year. We've seen a lot of leaks, and this time around, they've happened a lot earlier than expected, and I think the entire event's blown open. So what do you think about that, Jamshed?
I look forward to anything that might still be a surprise. I think we know a lot about the iPhone X. We might not know everything about the software. We don't know very much about the other lower end iPhone models that will be launched. But yeah, there's a lot to get into right now.
So Aditya, I think we were looking at the spec a little earlier today on what on what Apple's doing this time around. So do you think it's revolutionary, evolutionary, more of the same?
To push that, it's revolutionary and stuff. But yeah, we've had like displays for a while now on Android devices, when Apple devices would still use LCDs earlier. Other than that, features as well. I don't know. I just saw tap to wake in that HomePod firmware. Again, like, what year is this?
Yeah. So this is also
switched it to a 90-degree thing, and it might have new capabilities. Like we're hearing about AR being a possibility with the iPhone X.
Yeah.
So
in terms of AR, I think we also noticed that they have something called AR Kit. Could you lead us through that?
So Apple's done a few demos, most notably at its last big event, where we saw AR Kit and a few
commoditized Pokemon Go in a way where you can essentially create. It's easier for developers to create AR apps and launch them across. So one really cool demo was basically exploding space kittens, which was pretty cool, and as cool as it sounds, that's something you should check out. We managed to check out an early build of iOS 11, and we had a detailed breakdown on ARKit, and we'll have more breakdowns on ARKit when the Gold Master is out, hopefully from tonight. So that's something you'll
establish a baseline, a platform on which developers can really build stuff and get it out into people's hands, because that's what's most important. With anything brand new like this, it's a chicken and egg situation. And Android fragmentation is obviously a problem in getting things out, but Apple can actually and honestly really leapfrog a lot of the problems that we've had so far.
Still, in terms of innovation, I would still say that Android is getting there first, and Apple is helping it get mainstream. But other than that, I think in terms of innovation, I think I've been expecting a lot from Apple, and they haven't been really doing.
But that also comes down to the way things are used. Sure, you can have AR capabilities, you can have that kind of thing, but unless it's being used, unless it's useful and productive, we're better off waiting for someone like Apple to show us how to do it.
But speaking of which, though, just to cut in a bit, and on topics of innovation or lack thereof, one of the controversial rumors we've been reading about is the lack of Touch ID on the iPhone X.
Yes.
Don't you think that's a courageous move?
I was just going to say.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, considering, if you look at it, when you talk about ARKit and the fact that Google's done it before, and the fact that we've already seen face recognition on Samsung devices, it also begs to mention that while Face ID seems to be the only other option aside from standard PIN. So what's your take on that?
Again, I'm really curious to see the implementation of this, because Samsung's implementation honestly has been a little problematic. To see convenience, there have been various reports that it can easily be faked with a photo, or things like that, or how you're going to deal with somebody just holding it up to your sleeping face, or law enforcement situations where you can't be compelled to hand over a pin or a fingerprint, but you can't do anything about anyone pointing a phone at your face. So there's a lot of questions about that. Accidental triggers are a big question. How it'll work at night is a big question. At least for payments, it seems that it will not only have to recognize your face, but you'll also have to double tap the side button, the power button, which has, as a side note, taken on many more functions now that there's no home button. But we can get to that later. So honestly, again, everyone else has only gone after because of rumors that Apple was trying to do it. To do the And we had reports that it would be on the back, which Samsung has done, and that hasn't worked out great, but at least it's there. Then there were reports that it would be on the sides or the power button or something of that sort.
I think Sony has done something like that.
Yep.
Sony
there.
has,
Yeah.
but it's a little fiddly, and
It did it first, but okay.
but the point is again form over function.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
moving on to other facets of the iPhone X, I think we have a rumored price as well. And so, how many kidneys this time around?
I have no clue. Like the prices of phones have been going up. I've not kept a track of kidney prices, so I'm not sure how many kidneys you have to say.
Phone
But
price
yeah,
wise.
so I think it's
$999.
rumored to start at $999. So it definitely isn't cheap.
Yeah. So
We're looking at up to maybe 80,000, somewhere between 70 and 80,000, and that's for the base model, which is, on a good note, supposed to have 64 gigs of storage.
Yeah. So this would be the iPhone X you're
yes.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be the iPhone X. Now we've also seen rumors and purportedly genuine images of something called iPhone X Edition. Now, Edition is what Apple has used to denote higher end products such as the ceramic or gold watches in the past. Higher storage, 256 should be a standard option. We're seeing unconfirmed reports of 512.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be reserved for an iPhone X edition. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
And in addition to this, I think the spec of the iPhone X 8 and 8 Plus have leaked as well, right?
Yeah.
So we're
And
looking
like
at
for
3 gigs of
starters,
RAM?
like you won't have 7 and like the 7S and the
7S.
7S Plus
Yeah.
that most people have been expected, but instead it'll be the 8 and the 8 Plus. That's what is rumored.
Yeah.
And so the specs, like you say, 3 gigs of RAM is what is expected. I think an A11 chipset.
Yes.
Probably. But any idea about what architecture, what number of cores or anything?
So one rumor we have been, which is rather recent, is the fact that the iPhone X might have a 6-core chip, which is what's rumored. However, we don't know at this stage if that's actually the case. Now, what Apple tend to do is have the same components across with differences in terms of memory. So, which possibly means we could see the same chip on the 8 and 8 Plus and the iPhone X, but that's not confirmed at this stage.
Yeah, we know surprisingly little about the 8 and the 8 Plus, assuming those are the names that they're going to have. As far as the strategy goes, maybe they just felt like they were falling too far behind Samsung, which just increases the number every year. But honestly, they should have done this before, because
like looking at what Samsung is doing, there's also rumors that Apple is going for a glass back design, just like phones we've seen with like the Galaxy S8 and even the S7 for that matter,
and 6,
and the 6 as well. So is that the reason when the naming has been changed from 7S? Because generally Apple is known to change the numbering.
It could be.
It could
very well be. But I mean, the 7 was an anomaly, so
they got rid of the headphone jack.
It's courage. But then,
wireless charging would require non-metal back.
And
so
what year is this wireless charging?
this is 2017.
Yeah.
So
But let's see how mainstream has wireless charging been before.
No, because
now.
it'll be interesting to see what kind of wireless charging standard do they follow, because we have Qi and PMA for wireless charging,
and it could be both.
It could be both.
or they could just call it Lightning and be done with
I'm
it.
sure they'll have a cutesy little name of their all thing going, but also because of the curved screen with the special shape and the cutout on the top for the sensors and the earpiece, and because they have only one OLED supplier. So it's the screen that is causing supply chain problems, and it's very likely that the iPhone X will not launch in as many countries as we've seen previous models launch, at least as quick.
Seen that happen with the 7. After the 7 Plus were out, the 6S saw a price drop, 5S saw a price drop, the SE has also finally got a price drop. So if you're in the market for an iOS device, and if you don't mind being a generation behind, it's a good time as any, right?
Just before new stocks of the new models hit, we generally see the old ones getting their biggest ever discounts. So it would be a fairly good time to pick up a 7 or a 7 Plus if you wanted to. I think that
Started getting questions. So on Facebook, we've got Akash asking us, would this...
So from a design standpoint, similar, familiar, but not exactly the same.
because all focus, all attention is on the iPhone X, so we're not expecting very much. That said, leaks regarding the lower end products to be introduced have been surprisingly sparse.
Yeah.
And it's not as though these are actually lower end products. They will be at the same
To work underneath the glass of the screen
because
there's no home button this time around. So on the iPhone X, there's a good chance you might not have Touch ID or a fingerprint scanner at all. But what about the 7S, 8, 8 Plus?
Like if
I would expect them to continue in the same mold as the current 7 and 7 Plus.
So if you're looking for a fingerprint scanner on an iOS device that's new, your options are essentially the 7S or 8 or whatever they're going to call.
But no 3.5mm audio jack.
Courage.
Correct. Yeah. But that said, we've been discussing a lot about phones. What other devices would you look out for in the event today?
Well,
what can we
lot.
expect?
As it turns out, quite a lot. It's looking like quite a jam-packed event.
So we have the HomePods, which was announced at the last Apple event, which is Apple's sentient speaker with AI and stuff and cool stuff like that. Basically, their equivalent of Google Home and Alexa. So we might see more information in terms of feature set, what else it can do, how it can work with the rest of the Apple ecosystem.
And availability.
Yes, most importantly, availability. Though again, we wouldn't expect India to see it day and date. There's a good chance we might get a little later.
If at all.
If at all, yes, that's the other thing. Because reason being, Siri support, the HomePod depends a lot on Siri, which is Apple's own assistant. And that hasn't had the best support for India. So, since this is heavily dependent on it, we might see a little delay. That aside, we might. There are rumors of a new Apple Watch as well. I think this time around they're probably going to put a chip for LTE.
Yeah, this is purportedly going to be called Apple Watch Series 3, and it will support LTE so that it's independently connected to the internet. You don't need your phone with you. So that opens up possibilities for exercising while you leave your phone behind, just being more in touch. And we'll have to see how cellular operators support that. Whether you're going to have a separate number, link them, whether you'll be able to use it as an extension. Internationally, we might see that happen. No idea about India.
Yeah, well, with that, I'd expect people to ask, will it work with Reliance Jio? But other than that, we've got a few more questions.
Nice.
Let's on YouTube, Neeraj is asking for the iPhone 8 or the X. The camera must be significant, because I think I do agree with Neeraj on this part, because Android flagships, the cameras on Android flagships have gotten significantly better. Like we have the Pixel, you've reviewed the HTC U11.
Yes.
So what are
Pixel 2 happening very soon. Would
So
expect
what is your opinion? Like how what does the iPhone 8 is up against? Like what would you say?
So that's actually a very good question. And honestly, let's also look at why Android manufacturers have been focusing on camera, because at the end of the day,
a significant bump in quality. It might or might not be enough to leapfrog the competition as it is. Everyone else is going. So aperture sizes, low light capabilities directly related.
So
a bit about filter, for lack of a better word.
So other than that question, we've got Vatsal asking a price near the $1,000 mark of the iPhone X. Like, do we expect that? So for the base one, so the iPhone X
almost certain to be the starting.
So to put it in a context, yes, it will be $999, and to put it into Indian context, $999 US usually works out to a lakh. Usually, and to give you some more perspective, you can end up buying two S8s for the same price.
Yeah, but I mean, if we look at the Galaxy Note 8, which is also coming at around that price point, we're looking at a fairly reasonable 70,000-ish price.
I think that will be for the 8 or probably for the 8.
Then even again, it's debatable if 70 should be the price or not, and if that's what people can afford. But yeah, that's what it's probably going to be at.
No, we're not casting any judgment here, and we're not saying it's a good price or a bad price, but what is it likely to work out to in India? Convert it, add 18% GST, which is what it looks like now. A little bit of padding. Apple has always padded its prices to safeguard against inflation, because they tend not to change those official prices
for a really long
time. But then again, Apple's official pricing regime has taken a huge hit over the last few years. And while we see those prices at launch time, they generally tumble quite significantly in the months to follow.
So we've got like one question on Facebook, which I think a lot of people who are watching this will have, is I think Ashish is asking that. It's what's the difference between the iPhone 8 and the iPhone X?
So one obvious difference is the design. We've seen the X to have a bezel-free or bezel-less design, much similar to the Mi Mix 2, much similar to the S8, to the S8 Plus, and to the Note 8. That's one thing we've seen. The other difference obviously would probably be in terms of the screen as well, where you have an OLED display on the X versus probably an LCD display on the 8.
Yeah. Other than that, there's no Touch ID.
Yeah, no Touch ID.
There's actually another way to attack this question, which is that we were referring to the iPhone X as iPhone 8 for a very long time.
Yeah.
We've only recently essentially confirmed that the name will be iPhone X and that the name iPhone 8 will be used for what we thought would be the 7S and the 7S Plus.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the difference between the 8 and the X, you might have seen a lot of reports prior to this weekend describing the iPhone 8 in the way that we are now talking about iPhone X. That's what that means.
Yeah. So yeah, long story short, there will be differences. They will be charging a premium, and more or less has to do with bezels in the screen, possibly the camera as well. Internally,
price.
yeah, price obviously. And internally, we're hearing that they probably would have a similar spec across the board, but that's yet to be confirmed.
Yeah. So again, just to clarify, the iPhone 8, which will most likely be announced tonight, and the iPhone 8 Plus will be the direct successors in place of the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus right now.
Yep.
There will not be a 7S and 7S Plus, to
Yeah.
the best of our knowledge. What we previously referred to as iPhone 8 is now going to be called iPhone X or possibly iPhone X Edition.
Yeah.
And that's going to be that $999 product, whereas these will continue to be the $649 and above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Sounds about right.
other than that, new AirPods expected.
So yeah, AirPods is one thing. I think we've heard a situation where this time around the AirPods will have their charging indicator outside the case, which will be useful this time around. But there don't seem to be any other major differences with that.
Other than that, it's just a slight revision, maybe in the manufacturing.
Yeah.
Hopefully a price reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
On
and
the previous one.
in addition to that, I think we've heard something on 4K in terms of an Apple TV. So, I mean,
Yeah,
tell us of that.
I mean, we've been expecting this for a while now,
Yeah.
and not super relevant for India, in the sense that we do have some of the content, but clearly not everything
Yep.
that Apple announces in terms of US content providers and partnerships. But yeah, this should be a new Apple TV with severely beefed up specifications capable of handling 4K streaming, which also raises the question of how 4K media will be introduced through iTunes, because that hasn't been done before, and possibly a new redesigned remote with maybe more buttons and controls, maybe haptic feedback, maybe improved Siri voice functionality.
But also another thing to keep in mind is there's a good chance we might be paying a premium for 4K content, because what we do know is that Apple has been having a back and forth with the studios, and the studios want to charge around $25 for a 4K video, so that might change. Yep.
So we've got more questions on YouTube now. Sunil is asking, tell me the update regarding new iPods. So
Yes. One very late breaking rumor is that there might be a new 7th gen iPod Touch. Now this again is very, very long overdue. The iPods have been neglected for the longest time. Apple just recently killed off the Shuffle and the Nano. It looks like the iPod Touch is the only iPod model left, and it's the only one with Wi-Fi, so you can get Apple Music, which is obviously the new focus. So I'd expect to see things around that. iPod Touch has also been stuck at the same smaller screen size.
Yes.
They never went to the iPhone 6, the 4.7 or the 5.5. So we might see either of those, or maybe both.
And
Updated processor, support for iOS 11 and whatever going forward.
yeah, though I mean that there's a good possibility Apple might not show any of this on stage on their live update on the site itself. So because while we're fans of the iPod here as well, there's a good chance that it might not get any focus on their keynote. But yeah, it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, or it might come later. It's just
Exactly.
a rumor right now. But then there's also the question of who is the iPod Touch for anymore, because if you look at the prices right now, it's completely ridiculous to buy an iPod Touch when you can buy a full function Android phone for much less. So it's got to have a killer feature, either photography, maybe some kind of video recording, some kind of appeal to live streamers or vloggers or selfies, or whatever it is that the phone industry is chasing right now.
But the iPod Touch has a killer feature. It's called a SIM tray and it's called the iPhone. But that's just our opinion.
But other than that, we've got another comment on YouTube asking us, can we expect the new cellular band as in 5G support for the upcoming iPhone model?
That's a very good question. And I honestly wouldn't think so at this stage. At least not for India.
No. We're actually quite far away from 5G trials anywhere in the world. network operators are just like validating standards and systems right now. I can tell you that tests are to consumer 5G rollout. So I would not expect it in this generation, possibly even the next.
Yeah.
But we already have phones with 5G support, right? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the S8, S8 Plus do have 5G support in some regions.
I'm not quite sure if it
Not quite
has
sure?
that.
Seriously, I do not think so.
Okay.
Not quite
Because
sure
that's
about
something
that.
they mentioned.
Yeah, but we've got on Facebook, we've got Sarvan asking us, is there all the new launches iPhones, like do all iPhones that they are expected to launch today have dual camera setup? That's his question.
That's actually a good question, and I think that would be cool if it did.
Yeah,
But since this is Apple, there's a good chance they might leave this to be an exclusive for the 8 Plus and the iPhone X,
Yeah.
while the iPhone 8, which was previously rumored to be the iPhone 7s, might not get it. That's what we think.
Yeah, it's possible that they won't really shake up the formula that they've used so far to separate the the standard and the plus model, whatever they're going to be called.
Yeah.
But it's always possible. Like I said, we really don't know very much about these. That's one of the pleasant surprises about this situation, where so much has been leaked so thoroughly.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, like one other thing that comes to mind is there is a possibility that like the depth sensing camera and the ER specific features can be kept exclusive for the iPhone X, making it like that to justify with the high pricing.
Yeah,
on it.
that could be the case. But fact of the matter is, on iOS 11, when we checked out ARKit on an iPhone 7,
Yeah.
it worked perfectly well. So and it's not like Apple to leave generations behind when they release a new version of iOS.
Yeah.
Sure, granted there are some features that require you to have a newer phone like 3D touch.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's going to be the case this time around. I think even with the 6, anyone with a 6S or even a 6 should be able to use ARKit just well.
Yeah.
So, but obviously the quality will differ. So that means if you have an X or an 8 or an X or an 8 Plus, you might see better depth sensing, might see more accurate AR readings, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you get the iPhone X, even a higher resolution display, so better
Yeah.
output as well.
Yep.
Most probably. Yeah. So, okay, there's one question on YouTube. Akash is asking, do you think people will be interested in the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus, considering there's the iPhone X?
Well, that's a very
Like,
good
yeah.
question. What do you think, Jamshed?
I think or the new shiny model, but I think there should still be a lot of interest in those ones.
Well-
I think in terms of availability, in terms of practicality, they'll certainly lose some sheen, they'll lose some appeal, but I don't think there'll be anything wrong with them.
I don't know. I'm of the opinion that at least for India, we're probably going to see a spike in 7, 7 Plus, SE, maybe even 6S sales.
Yeah.
I don't see the 8 Plus or the X being that much of a driver, at least for India. Reason being, at the end of the day, the cost is still too high. I mean, let's be honest here. How many people are going to spend $1,000 in India on a new phone?
So let's see what kind of
yeah.
financing schemes we have. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of people will buy it just because they want to show it off.
Yeah.
A lot of people will buy it because they're super fans.
True.
A lot of people will buy it because they genuinely like having the latest and greatest,
Yeah.
regardless of price.
Yeah.
And there's been no shortage of people buying the current iPhone
Yeah.
256 gig models, right?
True.
Yeah.
And if you're getting starting somewhere between 20 and 30, I think the 32 gig will land up somewhere between 30 and 35.
Yeah.
If not now, then at least over the next 6 months.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. No, but
and
you know,
it's gonna
looking
help
at
the
the
company.
looking at the iPhone X, what I can see is just because of the bezel-less display and thing, like because of that appeal, you might see an increase in Android sales for
Yeah.
similar devices.
Exactly.
Like you have like cheaper devices like the LG Q6. Like people, like you've seen Vivo phones, which a lot of other Chinese manufacturers, wherein their models look a lot like the iPhone.
Yeah.
So it might have helped them increase their sales because of the whole bezel-less thing.
Yeah.
But
So-
I'm happy about that, and it's been boring to see so many phones that are just exactly the same, with the same shape and the same 16:9 screen and the same general everything. It's nice to see a little variety. So Apple is doing it different.
Yeah.
Samsung, LG are doing
Yeah.
it different.
So yeah.
Sony has refused to do it different, but hey, that sets them apart.
Yeah. So I think that's about it. Like that's all the questions we had for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 10:30 p.m. Stay tuned to Gadgets 360
So
tonight.
yeah, we'll be as I said, having a live blog on our site. We'll also be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. You can catch it on any of these platforms.
Yep.
Although
And that'll be your first look at Apple Campus live.
Yep, that too. And if you have any questions, comments, let us know. It helps us do better next time around as well. And we'll see you for our post event stream as well. Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.